Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very fancy resource redistribution after show, reaction show. I don't know. If you guys are just tuning in, we were just watching the CCP TV stream hosted by very own Carneros, guest with Caleb Aranya as a guest, also from Talking in Stations. CCP Ratati, CCP Psych, and CCP Goodfella went through the dev blog that was released today about the resource redistribution coming to New Eden in mid-October. Before we move forward, we should probably address the elephant in the room, and that there are people who are very upset. I understand that people are very upset. If you went to Reddit, if you watched Twitch chat, if you consumed any form of Eve media whatsoever, you've definitely you're seeing some unhappy people. And it's important to understand why they're unhappy, right? Players are kind of feeling a little bit offended here because for years they've been crying about Rorqual proliferation and how easy it has been. And it kind of had seemed like it went a little bit unchecked. And now we're being thrown into a world where Tritanium is in only high sec, Isogen and Noxium are only in low sec. And everyone feels like they're being a little bit punished because of what some null sec groups were doing with super caps and stuff like that. But that's actually probably the impact you'd get from just reading the dev blog. Watching the report, my fears got a little bit assuaged. CCP have said that they plan to react quickly. And I think Carneros put it best, where he said, this isn't the new normal that we're going to be in, but it's a moment on a timeline. We're moving Eve in the direction of being healthier. Unfortunately, it still feels like we got hit with some rocks and sticks for the last few months here. And this is a bit of a boulder. But anyways, we're going to break down everything with our little panel here. And also, if you have questions, you can throw them into our Discord channel or Twitch chat. We'll do our best to take them. Guys, just don't spam Twitch chat that you're mad, because then I can't read anything and it gets just awful. Joining me on cam is Kenneth Feld from a wonderful corporation of EVE Online. I don't know who his CEO is, but he must be the most handsome EVE Online player ever. Kenneth Feld is an industry aficionado for many years, and he's also in the CSM. So CSM 15 on there right now, who got to get a little bit of a preview of this. Kenneth, what was it like chatting with CCP about these changes?
It wasn't much different than the Twitch stream that they just had. It was, we found out a few days ago, and obviously none of us were overjoyed. Basically, we were told it's going to happen and kind of given the reason why. And there you go. It's happening.
So we also have some other guests here, Nick Bison, Sadis, and Astraeos Khan, who will be chiming in. Feel free, guys, to come in at whatever point you want to, whatever points you want to make. I'll just be kind of like guiding us around a little bit, and of course, I'll give my input as well, because I can't stop. I think one of the funny, the funniest moments of the CCP TV broadcast, where CCP Goodfella channeled his inner Game of Thrones, but in like some weird alternate version, where he said the carrots are coming. So I guess that is a good thing. Dunk Dinkle, I think, put it best, where he said that this patch feels like it's been all stick and no carrot. What do you guys feel about it? The one that's coming in mid-July.
Mid-July.
Or, I'm sorry, mid-October. Pandemic has got me all screwed up with times.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And they don't know what's going to happen. No one knows what's going to happen. This is a, let's see if this works type thing. And CSM has been promised, iterations at a pace that has not been seen before. I listened to part of the stream, and I don't remember if it was Snorri or I'm sorry, I don't know his CCP name, but they admitted that there could be some trust issues from past. We promised to iterate, and Rorquals went unchecked for what, 3 years, something like that, 2 years. And we've been told to flat out call them out if they don't iterate fast enough. They are, I think, going to give us a little bit more data that we asked for, just so we can kind of watch along. And as an industrialist, nothing to do with the CSM. Noxium's been my choke point for the better part of a year, and limiting it even further is really, really going to put a dent in what I do. So I can only imagine that it's going to affect others in roughly the same way, and they need to keep an eye on that and look at the levels and go from there.
All right, so Sadis, what do you think is going to happen with like when October hits? Obviously, the markets have already started to adapt. People are trying to get stockpiles. People are trying to make that quick buck because that's what EVE players are very good at doing, right? They see a dev blog, they break it down as fast as they can, and they react to what they think the market's going to do. So,
Well,
Sadis, what do you think? What's your take on all this?
I think that this is just a case of one of those decisions that's going to have some of the impacts that they want, in that the supply chains that people use all across are going to have to be expanded. Some more people are going to need to be brought into those supply chains. But what I'm nervous is going to happen is any economic benefit that comes out of that trade is only going to go to the people that CCP is trying to target to do wealth extraction from. And I think that from everything I've seen, it's going to be a challenge to have the impact that they want, considering the massive stockpiles that are out there. I think that if they actually wanted to hit the stockpiles, the current war is probably the most effective thing that has ever hit any stockpile of materials out there. And getting a change like this in the middle is going to de-incentivize people from putting their assets at risk in a way that is appreciable.
That is definitely an interesting take. The war that you're mentioning, of course, hit a little bit of a boiling point earlier this week in 49 Tech U, one of the more storied systems even of online. Two super cap forces went up against each other. Some supers died. A bunch of dreads died. Overall, 1.2 trillion was just eradicated in the blink of an eye.
And just to clarify and elucidate on what I said a minute ago, you have these massive stockpiles, and they're mostly in the hands of older players like several of us on this call. And if they really want to hit that, the best way to get rid of those stockpiles is to find actual reasons for us to fight, not to hit the supply chain when it's needed the most and when it'll interrupt things and prevent people from doing just that. So I don't understand the timing, and it is also strikes me as a little bit intrusive in a massive war that it hits right now. But that's just a little bit of a side point.
Yeah, fairly said, and I think this might be something that maybe the CSM was alluding to when they made that kind of open letter to CCP saying, "Hey, don't mess with too much stuff. The war is coming." We all thought it might have been something to do with weather effects or anything like that. It might have been just something like this.
Probably.
Yeah, when we wrote that letter,
I don't
I
think
got
you
to be
can talk
careful
about
here.
that.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was this, and there's no way they could wait for this, because once they put that plan in place, what, last September or so, they've got to see this through. They can't just, oh, there's a war on, so we're gonna do the scarcity and resource distribution thing. We're just gonna put that on pause for 6 to 9 months to where these nerds can go fight each other. It can't work that way. They've got to see this through. So it's going to happen no matter what happens in game, no matter who it hurts or helps. I'm confident that they're going to see this through to the end.
I'm confident they're going to see it through to the end as well. I'm just not confident that they actually have a roadmap or plan. And I think that's one of the major frustrations I saw in the Twitch chat, in that there's not enough information for people to make any valid estimates or guesses as to what's coming in the future. And that is certainly a frustration point that I gleaned from the very polite Twitch chat during the stream.
Well, I think a lot of it is, hey, we can't tell you what's coming because that'll affect the data, but stuff is coming. Just trust us. And that might have been part of the problem too. I think a lot of players they feel a little bit betrayed by the sudden, not the sudden, but the constant barrage of what they have felt as nerfs over the last few months, since December.
Yeah, it's and part of it, I'm confident they have a plan, but part of it is a flowchart thing. Like they do this, and if A happens, then do this. If B happens, then do this type thing. So it may not be even entirely fleshed out as far as what they're going to do, because it relies on player reactions, and then how we react as a community is how they continue to form what their overall goal is. And the CSM, as far as resources and that kind of stuff, we are kept pretty much in the dark until the very last second, mainly for our own preservation, plausible deniability type thing. So, but that being said, that there's going to be some reaction there. I mean, this whole thing has to be somewhat reactionary. So, well,
Speaking of reactionary, if I can segue, I think we have some miners in the channel, and we haven't actually asked them how this impacts them yet.
Yeah, let me drag. We've got some great people on the panel as well that we haven't really, or I haven't really given a chance to speak yet. Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is you do and just your overall take on this devlog.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, Nick Bison. I've got a small indie corp that I'm back in HiSec now since I got blown out of null a while back. Happens to all of us repeatedly. Make most of my ISK off of, low-level manufacturing up through Orcas. Now, what this change means to me is, right as of today, in my building plans, if I need Noxium for a ship, I either head over to Caldari space or down to a Mars space in order to mine it or trade for it efficiently. Obviously, the two null items I need, be it Mexilon or Zydrine, well, that's trade hub action. What I need to look at now, and I've already started doing, is all right, with Nox being out in low, do I need a relationship with a null group, or excuse me, with a low group that's going to allow me in to mine there, possibly build a relationship that they are, mutually beneficial. It changes the dynamic of what I need to do, and to a certain extent, I'm kind of liking it because it's a new challenge. I haven't had to do this before.
Have you ever tried to have a long-standing agreement or discussion with a low-sec corporation?
Low-sec's a little tougher, without a doubt. I have in the past. It's actually a little easier, I think, from the few times I've been successful with it, than some of the null entities I've had to deal with, because for a lot of the null folk, instead of dealing with a small-time supplier like me that I may have something they want, it's easier and they have better control if they do it themselves through an alt corp and their own people. And obviously there's a safety aspect to that too. So I'm going to be searching for my place in this, and I'll figure it out. It ain't going to be easy, but what the heck.
What I quite frankly expect to happen in HiSec as well, getting back to Elise's questions from a few minutes ago, if the only source of trit for the major null blocks is HiSec, you're going to see HiSec altcorps taking up all of the mining in HiSec and war decking anyone who's not part of them. And we'll get our trit somehow.
I was thinking more of a nefarious way, Hulk again coming back in a big way. I think it would be pretty interesting if Noblogs say, "Hey, these guys just lost a big fight. They need to restock their trit. We're gonna go and shoot every Hulk that we can find, so they can't actually get that trit." But Nick, I think what you said is probably making CCP very happy if they're watching. I think you're the exact use case that they were looking for on this. Do you think that you would take your group out to LowSec if you can't find anyone to build a relationship with out there, or if they're pirates who don't mine? Or would you take your guys out there? Would you carve out a little piece of space?
In our current size, no. But I've already got some feelers out to Snuff to talk about making use of some of their space under their protection if possible. So, but that's probably a pipe dream at this point. But if I don't explore it, it's going to be a lot harder.
Snuff's reaction. So you're going to bring a mining fleet through which gate when? Okay.
I think the opposite.
The laughter, I think, initially was before they read the resource changes.
Yeah, I think Snuff are looking at this like, hey, holy shit, the little fiefdom of LowSec that we control now, this just got a whole heck of a lot more valuable. They probably got the little emoji with the $sign eyes. That's probably that's how I'm envisioning Snuff right now.
But how many people? So Nick, sorry, I'm interrupting.
No, go ahead, man.
How many LowSec groups have a mining or industrial wing to them? Many of them have industrialists, but people who go out and mine and do PvE in LowSec, that's an extremely rare thing. So that is the one spot where I think that folks like Nick and his group do get some opportunity out of this based on if there is a plan. But they already said there isn't a plan because they said they're going to watch the data and determine what they're going to do then, which is the definition of not having a plan. They have guidelines. So if they don't follow through with their guidelines, I don't think anyone's going to get value from this.
And I have to look at the real probability that, because something else CCP also mentioned was that this will evolve and morph. This is not the final form. So 60, 90, 180 days might be the extent to which I could build a relationship with one of these groups without actually becoming part of them. So, to call it volatile would be an understatement.
If Snuff, and we actually got a new guest in here real quick who I'll introduce shortly, but I just want to go back to Nick real quick. If Snuff came to you and said, hey, or someone like Snuff, I don't know why we're calling out Snuff, probably because they're the most notable LowSec power player that we can think of. But if someone like Snuff says, hey, we made this alt alliance called Snuff Industrial Corporations, would you guys join? Or would you take your group to join it? Would you give up that little piece of your independence to join that group to harvest resources safely in LowSec?
That is a good question. It would have to look at the pros and cons of what their particular requirements would be for me and my group in particular, and does that match what we want to do? Because obviously there's got to be, both sides have to get their back scratched for it to work. But I would definitely entertain that.
That's pretty cool. All right, Eric Sheng, you just came into the chat. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to us and give us just your hot take.
Hi, my name's Eric Shang. I run a 500+ man HiSec Corp. Been in LowSec, nullsec, done everything over the last 13 years. My take on it is quite interesting. I kind of like the change because it's something new, and I feel it's a bit of a shakeup that EVE kind of needs. Obviously HiSec, we'll always have the AFK mining going on, but with LowSec, it's being quite PvP orientated, and it's not really felt organic in a weird way within the game. You've had nullsec and they kind of look after themselves, and you've had HiSec and they have their playstyle and LowSec have their playstyle. But the organic, there's no real where every single sec status interacts with each other and has a a direct relationship within the game. And I think this might actually start to bring that in, like you guys were saying before, with, high secs like myself. Like, I have quite a big corp, and a lot of my guys are indie. So this kind of might actually force us to say to like low sec people, we can provide the mining and the industry for you. And you can get a cut of whatever we mine from that. It's obviously going to be up to the low sec entities whether they take that on or not. So that's going to be an interesting conversation that we'll have to have.
Do you think you would ever transition, similar to the question I asked Nick, do you think you would ever transition from being a high sec industrial, pretty big player, 500 man group? Do you think you would ever move to low sec, or move maybe to a low sec border system where you can base out of high sec but make excursions into low sec?
You're already on a border system, so it's kind of it will be the best of both worlds if we can get into the low sec as well, because we'll have the high sec mining for the very, very brand new players that are quite scared of the low sec, but then gently get them into the low sec part, and then we'll hopefully, if things go the way that we would like it to go, then we would have the low sec as well to kind of help mining. But again, it will all depend on the low sec entities. And I think it's a very interesting dynamic that CCP has created now, is that the low sec is the bottleneck now, and they hold quite a lot of power. So how they deal with that power will determine how this really plays out.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting dynamic, and it's really great to see you guys' takes on this, or to hear your takes on this, because a lot of the communities I interact with are nullsec players, or people that don't necessarily do industry, and their view is completely different. They're worried that the little guy and the middle guy, or the middle-sized groups, are going to get shafted and things like this. But from what I'm hearing, you guys are, I don't want to say optimistic, but at least cautiously optimistic and quite favorable of these changes. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I think you have to be. You have to kind of take you have to roll with the punches, really. So, and just like any null sec or low sec will have to change, we have to change as well. Doesn't mean that we have to look more into low sec, which is something that's quite scary for a lot of the newer guys. Yeah, sure. It means that if you're wanting to get more valuable ore and kind of progress, then you're going to have to start looking into that. So it's an interesting dynamic that CCP is really thrown into the business, shall we say.
All right. I also want to introduce another guest of ours who I've accidentally just overlooked, Estrellas Khan. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do in Eve, and how you view these changes?
Absolutely. So, my name is Asteros Khan. I am a faction warfare, high sec, low sec, and null sec mining character. Um, I am honestly optimistic as well, kind of like everybody else, because with CCP updates, they don't really do a very good job of adding on to things. So I'm kind of cautious about when they promise me things. But from the high sec aspect, I'm actually very excited because my group, we're more of like a mid-size. Just to give an example, when my alternate alliance that I work with in HiSec is called DamFam, and we are right on the border of LowSec, so we actually do have access to moon mines, moon miners, excuse me, in LowSec, and we also can, alongside of faction warfare, set up mining/defensive fleets. So we're actually kind of a little bit excited because the adaptability that we have for our terrain and our region is a little bit it's a little bit more easier for us to transition into this. I feel like just from my perspective, I'm actually really excited because I have my own personal fleet of 14 characters that I can mine with. And
Astra, excuse me a sec. Can you move the mic a little bit away from your mouth?
oh, sorry, this is a little bit better.
Yes, much better. Thanks. Continue.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
Over, I'm excited because as a miner, I feel like for high standing, this is gonna increase my whole amount per hour. And then for my alliance, really be ability to adapt, via tech, as long as snuff doesn't come and smash all the Mimitar's assets again. And then as well, one thing that hasn't been talked about is moon mines themselves. You still will be able to get pyrite and Moleculan from a lot of these moon ores, And with all of our stations, we have a total amount of about 15, maybe 16 moon drills that we can pop and, schedule at any point. So from a competitive aspect, I think my group's going to benefit. But the overall small sec, high sec, small indie corporation who's only reliant on, the belts, I feel like they have the most to lose in this, not only for them being able to just be, their own entity and not having to say, ally with a bigger corporation or join a bigger alliance. um, they're not going to be able to compete because they're not going to get all these regular ores. And say for example, Mimitar space. If we're not actually able to compete with a lot of these other regions, people just won't come to import their nullsec ore to try to get exported tritanium. So I think that's also going to be an interesting dynamic. But overall, it's a little too soon for me to be able to say like, no, I'm gonna hate it, or yes, I like it. But I'm optimistic.
All right. So now that
I was actually curious because we got obviously Kenneth and Citus here who deal with this on a much larger scale than we do. What do you think about what we were just saying? You guys think we're like flapping in the wind, or are we just looking at it from a completely different perspective than what you have?
Go first, Kenneth, please.
I don't think there's any real perspective to look at it right now because this is kind of new for everybody. I personally think you're going to have a hard time mining in low sec with any frequency, especially once the activity goes up. Like right now, there's some there, people know it's there, and they're kind of like, we'll just let them be because we don't, we're too lazy to go kill them. But, when you start putting Rorquals out there or orcas, you're going to have to use mining barges more or less, or exhumers. And, then the bling starts adding up, and people like, and they can smell it. And then you're gonna have more friends there than you know what to do with in a very short amount of time. That's what I think. Mm-hmm. Now, with all the null groups basically dogpiling into Delve, it may be 6 or 8 months before they can get around to killing everybody. So I don't know. And that's one thing I did caution. A couple things I cautioned, and not about the actual thing, but during the war, some of the statistics may be skewed slightly with what they're getting as results with, basically 3/4 of nullsec all involved in trying to kill each other. That there's a lot of space out there that we would normally care about that we don't right now.
So, I think that it's cute. I think that there's a lot of work that would have to happen for any of the high sec minor dreams to matter, but I think it is possible. The added value in low sec is going to draw more people there, and hopefully it's not the low sec Naya Mina that ends up taking over that area, and hopefully it does open them up to bringing in some new players. That traditionally has been a challenge in low sec. Faction warfare will be an interesting place to be because God save a miner who goes in there, because that'll be a wood chipper. And your average person from high sec isn't aware of the long-standing policies and tribalism of low sec, and maybe it's good that that gets broken down over time. But I think that anyone who comes from high sec isn't used to not flying very blingy Concord protected ships. And when they're in low sec, they will very quickly realize that there is a definite balance between how nice your kill mail is and how useful you are to whoever owns that space.
Okay, interesting thing there, Citus. I do appreciate that. But in my particular case, and I'm one of the newer players in my core, and I've only been at this for 13 years, in and out of null, I kind of know what's going to happen to me out there in low if I hang out there in the wrong time and wrong place. But I do appreciate what you're saying, because It's going to happen. I'm going to blow up again.
I think so. I think it's really easy to say that people who live predominantly in high sec are unaware or ill-equipped to deal with the dangers of low sec. But we all started in high sec, and we've managed to stumble our way into different areas of the game, and I think we came out quite fondly. CCP Convict asks a question, which I'll pose to you guys. What do you think could be the positive outcomes of having Noxium and Isogen being in low-sec only for at least for a period of time? Do you think like the exclusivity of it will bring more people into low-sec? Do you think it might become a more vibrant area? Or do you think it'll be overrun by kind of like some of the dominant forces that are in there now?
Can I just a second?
Oh yeah, sure. We're also joined by Caleb Aranya, who is a guest on the show with CCP on CCP TV. Welcome, Caleb.
Guys, it's just they were not really that willing to answer some of the hard questions, and I would just and the whole trust us thing. Of course, a lot of people out there feel that there's no real reason to trust CCP because they've made so many mistakes. So I think it's kind of up to people like yourself, Elise, to actually remind the player base that were not around back when some of these things actually worked in EVE. There was many problems back then that were completely horrible, right? But when you're talking about things like the fact that, yes, mining was primarily done in high sec, especially the tritanium dependency, right? These things worked. The differentiation of space back then worked. You can talk about other things being broken, but at least those things really did their job, right? So this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to repair the mistakes that we've had over the past 6 to 8 years that have fundamentally made the game less enticing and exciting, right? And these are the changes that caused all the things like massive proliferation of titans, massive caches of supers everywhere. The fact that we have fundamentally gone from the effective price in labor being now 1/100th of what it was when they were introduced. This is the reality of what we are playing right now. They're trying to solve some of this, and they're starting from the bottom, and it feels like crap, but it is really the first step, and we need to remind people that for this game to become playable, these are some of the things that is required, right?
Okay, so I'm going to go to Elise's question and try to channel an optimistic version of myself. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm not a bitter vet who's very jaded and been playing this game way too long. The positives that could happen in low sec, more people. You could go through systems and not automatically expect to see nobody. Like you go through most of low sec and it is dead quiet. That, if there's more people in system, will make it more difficult to bot in those systems because when you are doing whatever with an automated program and there's people in system, it is much more challenging for you. It will provide some financial incentive for people to go there, which is positive. People will need to have high sec to low sec trading routes and low sec to null sec trading routes, which could in theory give them a spot for a middleman, but I would expect middle person, sorry, allow me to be inclusive. But I expect that will quickly get gobbled up by the null blocks as they will enforce that as part of their will. And generally, low sec has been begging for a long time for them to do something. And I think that this does give a reason to be in low sec, but it's using a sledgehammer to solve the wrong problem in some ways, but I tried to be as positive as I could.
I would, if I can answer that question from my perspective, it's one of those things as to how long they let it run for will determine what the outcome is. If you're thinking short term, then low sec will have a field day with all the miners trying to get in there to obviously try and mine if you think of like Penny's Out Snuff, Shadow Cartel, all these guys, they're rubbing their fingers they're rubbing their hands together at the moment, thinking of all the the procurers and retrievers and hulks that are going to come in there to mine it. And that's the kind of the short term thing. The long term is that obviously once they realize that this is the new passive moon mining that they've been crying about for quite a long time, then and they take that on board, then actually it could benefit them as well. So it just depends on how long they run it for.
How long until they introduce mining permits for LoSec in their space?
To also answer the question, I think it's gonna be a good change for LoSec. Right now it's kind of dead. You don't really do much out there besides go do PvP or do some slight PvE. With this will create more activity, even in like your small corporations who just border the high secs. I don't feel like anybody would go out there in like a big type of mining fleet either. I think it's gonna be like solo miners who just try to just get in and out. And yeah, I think it's gonna be a good thing as long as it's short term, because long term, it's only gonna just crash the economy, and long term, it's not a good thing.
So one of the things that I'm hopeful for, and I'll just butt in real quick to air my own opinions, because I can't stop. I'm sorry, I tried. I can't stop myself. One of the things I'm hopeful for is when I played Eve back in the day, I could roam through LoSec, find a group of people, and have a fight that wasn't necessarily just in the faction warfare zone. So it wasn't frigate on frigate stuff. I could go out in like a Drake or something like that. And this is obviously rose-colored glasses. Eve will never go back to that version of itself. But I do really like the idea of there being more than just snuff or rapid withdrawal or people like that. I kind of long for the days where there was that dynamic between like snuff and shadow cartel, where neither one had like a huge dominance over the other, and they would kind of poke at each other and prod each other. And they had like little spheres of influences that would oftentimes overlap and result in some pretty funny fights. So I'm kind of hoping that that's the result we get, where people like that kind of show up. Also, LoSec it's pretty bad right now, but it's not totally dead. There are areas, especially in domain, where people probably don't expect this, but there's a group that is very strong. They have a big capital presence. They actually rent out LoSec systems, like the system
What?
of there are LoSec renters right now existing in Eve under your nose in domain. It's absolutely wild. And one of my side hustles is building stuff in LoSec and having a little miniature industrial group in LoSec. And trying to find a base of operations that wasn't already taken was incredibly hard and challenging. So I mean, there is some action in LoSec. Maybe this will be the spark that will kind of light it up for a little bit. I'm interested that you guys are saying that you want this only to be a short-term thing, because in the long term, you fear that it might make too big of a target on your back.
I personally don't mind the long term of it. I think it's a new change. It's creating a bottleneck in LoSec, which could create content and could create conflict as well between null and low, possibly. I obviously I don't know how long they're going to keep it in for, but I think it's I think when you realize it's getting broken, then sure, change it.
So I want to
Right. The whole thing that people have been saying a lot today is, well, this will bring on cartels. But anyone that actually understands how Eve is supposed to work, someone wanting to or trying to grab a perceived cartel opportunity, that is exactly what brings value. It's what brings incentives for conflict. It brings points of failure, things that we have seen so many times in Eve history, that with the exception of complete blue balling or agreements like when all the null blocks come together, then cartels don't work. Hell, even back then, a big null cartel eventually broke up because a few of them started thinking, well, maybe I don't want to be in this cartel anymore. So this is exactly what is needed. And the fact that LoSec gets this opportunity to become almost a monopolistic area of space that everyone else is depending on will bring some gameplay in there. The question is, how is it going to be executed, right?
I think I think the update itself, its implementation was really just to bring people together through struggle. So I see a lot of positives maybe in the future if this does go long term, where your high sec corporation might reach out to Snuff and maybe create like a deal like, hey, if you allow us to mine here, we give you a certain percentage of whatever we mine. Because those relationships are important because Snuff doesn't want to mine and
My
miners
favorite
don't want to be killed.
my favorite part of that is you think Snuff sticks by its deals. That's my favorite
Well,
part.
they don't, but I'm using it as an example. Like, oh, okay, insert default your pirate low sec group who doesn't like to mine and they just like to kill people. They
Oh.
might just shut off an area of space just so whoever whoever buys their miner permit will be able to mine there. You know what I mean? So that creates an ecosystem around that, which I'm excited about. But I'm also kind of hesitant because you do have Snuff who can basically be anywhere in low sec in a matter of minutes. So if you do not have the ability to, say for example, buy them off, you're not really going to be effective out there.
A few other things on positivity. Who would have thought 5 years ago that Pandemic Legion would have a industry wing, and that we could keep up with the entire alliance? So things change over time, and mostly due to the guy smiling in the middle, because he's the one that helped get it started. So, but mining in low sec right now, they don't even measure it. It's not really measurable. It's so low, but hopefully it will grow. People like you guys will venture out. I'm sure you'll see some losses. You'll learn to deal with those. You'll learn to overcome when a small gang comes around, how you can actually deal with them, kill them all, and then you all keep mining. And once you get everything set up and go, feel free to contact me on Discord. I'll gladly trade you Mega and Zydrine for your Nox and ISO, and Trip too.
Deal?
Yo,
Deal. I'll take that deal.
Wow, are you guys making deals already? It's not even out
No,
yet.
of course
I
not.
was just actually I was going to ask Kenneth that question is because early in the show he had mentioned that his biggest bottleneck has been the Noxium through the years. It's like, how do you see resolving that in your place?
I don't really. Now, one thing that people are they're locking on the Noxium, but Noxium is the one thing that is not locked to low sec. It's majority low sec, but there is still some going to be available in null sec. Isogen is completely locked to low sec. However, everyone's got a cave of Isogen sitting around somewhere, a couple 100 million units. So it'll be, I'd have to probably build 50 Titans before I'd run through my Isogen pile. But Nox is like 12 to 14 million per Titan. So that'll burn through pretty quick. So basically what I'll be doing now is just timing my builds and, preserving what I have and only using it for the stuff that's really important, mostly for the T1 hulls for Tech 2, and sourcing stuff from other places if I need to.
So there's,
If I may, just a question for me for the guys from Null that obviously have a lot, like especially like Sadis and Kenneth. With the changes now, that obviously means that, for instance, capitals and supers and things like that, prices will go up. Will this eventually mean that they will get used less because maybe they get to the point where they're too expensive to just randomly drop? Or is that like a pipe dream?
I look forward to killing as many supers and caps as possible because now they're much more difficult to replace, and I will laugh and dance on their graves. And I expect them to get used less.
I don't think they're going to be used less from my perspective. I don't want to cut you off. I'm sorry. I know I'm supposed to.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I don't think they're going to be used less. I don't think the reason people are hesitant to field super caps is because they're afraid of the price tag afterwards. Right? BTAC are the biggest fight to ever happen ISK wise. that all that shit was replaced in a month, right? And this is before Rorquals were insane machines. The price tag has nothing to do with it. It's the loss of morale that comes with losing that big Z-kill fight, or that loss of momentum.
I know what you're saying there, Elise, and I agree with part of that. But if the minerals literally don't exist to rebuild it, the price will go up. And if people are deployed in a war, the biggest blue donut in the history of EVE is all fighting in Delve right now. There's like, that's just a fact and a statement. Is it going to affect this war specifically? Soon it will, because replacing ships, it'll affect ship choices, it'll affect what people are going to use, but mostly it will impact the resupply of ships, because the industrialists are going to not have those deep supply chains and those deep pockets to refill those ship buckets. So if you lose 50 supers, all of a sudden, oh, how are we going to get 50 more supers? Supplies down, cost goes up, and people and there is the rush, and I'm not going to disagree on that. You know, there is oh, I lost my hell. Rats. You know, that's not good. But if you go back and you're used to buying a hell for 12 and all of a sudden it's 25, you're like, oh man, that's 25 bill now. It's so as the prices go up, players in that lower middle class of players all of a sudden can't afford to do their resupplies. It doesn't affect people like me. Like I'm probably more like you, where I don't care. I'm sitting on, like you said, you have a 100 million of Noxium. Add a 0 to that, then you're into the range that I'm in. That's going to take a long while to burn through, no matter what. So I think that lower middle class economic group in EVE is the one that's really going to take it in the face, and I could see their morale and their willingness to put things at risk going way down.
I think this is also where the thing plays into as to how long they actually they run the low sec the ore, because if they run it for a very long time, the shortages are going to start showing, and things are going to start really ramping up in prices, like capitals. So it's going to get to a point where, yes, you have lost 200, 300 capitals this week or this month, or over the last how many, let's say a year, you've lost over 1,000 capitals. But to then replace those capitals is going to get more and more and more expensive. So then fielding those capitals becomes a question of, right, we only have this much Noxium coming in because of whatever pressures we have in low sec. Do we now go attack low sec, which creates content? Or do we just start changing our doctrines to better suit the current demand as to minerals? Obviously, I'm just hypothetically stating something.
You're assuming that we have to go buy minerals to replace the capitals.
I don't.
So that's the thing,
Exactly.
right? So I think Status actually brings out a good point. There are groups in this game, and individuals even, that have just giga stockpiles of this stuff, right? So if I'm taking out a Dread and it dies, just because there's Noxium only in low sec and I don't have a low sec group to do it to get it, I'm not really worried about where my next Dread's gonna come. I know this guy with the Dragon's Gold of Noxium is gonna just throw some at me, and I can build my ship. And I think that's probably the point of this whole thing.
But
there are stockpiles that they want the game to go through. Cesar Birtati said very flatly, the game was in bad shape, not good shape, not decent shape, but could do better. It was in bad shape, the ecosystem, a year ago, and it is better now. Obviously, we don't know what metrics he uses to define better.
Yeah. But you know that little thing that shows you how much your characters are worth at the bottom of your screen? Since this announcement went in, I've made 810 billion ISK.
That's some dang Skrilla. But so I want to move a little bit over, kind of change course a little bit as to kind of predictions about what you think is going to happen, or like what is this going to mean for people who aren't necessarily miners or industrialists, just like John Q. Normal, who just does stuff in EVE Online. What is this going to mean in, let's say, December of this year? Is the market going to look any different from how it is now? Are things going to be a lot more expensive, a little bit more expensive, about the same? Are stockpiles going to just go down and prices stay the same? We'll start with Estrella. So what do you guys, or Estrella, what do you think is going to happen in like December?
I think that based off how this war goes, that's where we see the market goes. Like if you see a lot of ships dying, obviously people will buy more. Thus, that will create more demand. Thus, the prices go up. Which that's probably most likely what's going to happen because eventually, people who do indie stuff and Rens, Heck, Do Dixie, they'll go through their stuff and they'll have to increase their prices for what they build. So eventually, like your normal day PvEer who runs missions, their cost for a lot of their ships are gonna go up.
All right, Caleb, what do you think is going to happen in December for just in a general type thing? We're not talking about how LowSec is going to change or anything like that. Let's say I like to
I think
run incursions or something, or I like to do LowSec FW. Is my cost of life going to go up?
yeah, a bit, but so is your potential revenue streams. So it's going to be fairly balanced out. I would say if we're talking about cost of living impact for the little guy and medium scale stuff, I think it won't increase with more like 25, maybe 50% around Christmas. And it's really a question of how do you fit the stuff that you use and how do you balance your actual risk and what you put out there, right? Because I keep hearing this, how do you get rich in Eve? Well, you don't undock in 80% of your nav. It's like, it's very simple, dude. And you just manage your income to your expenses. And for the smaller guys, I don't really think this is going to be much of a problem because they're going to get stuff just like they do now. There's also going to be things like the trig invasions or filament stuff, which is still going to be potentially very lucrative. So there is going to be avenues of making that everyday income. What really is going to be pushed by this is people that need these things on massive scales. This is why I think it's going to be great to see even something that Carneros hinted at. Well, when I see 250 rogues getting blapped off the field, that's now suddenly a loss. They're not going to just instantly be reproduced, right? The whole already replaced is going to go away for big stuff. That means that people need to be really strategic about what they field, who they attack, and how they build their empires, right? I think Kenneth just mentioned the fact of other groups starting to pick up some of the actual empire building and having stashes and not just being dependent on these infinite faucets. I think it's amazing to see these things potentially hit the game, and I think everyone will actually be more happy, at least when the fight of this war is over, because I think that's when the changes are really going to hit, because we're going to have removed some of all that big stuff. Toys will start mattering again, and that also means that the way you interact with those little guys and middlemen and supply chain guys, they're going to have more bargaining power, right? As I keep trying to explain to people, to a miner, this is some of the best things that ever happened in EVE Online, because the actual value of their hours of work is worth more. That means that they have way more bargaining power when they then need to sell their stuff. This is just factual. The only thing that I see as a risk right now is some of the secondary and tertiary things that haven't been touched yet. Things like ISK printing, that is still potentially going to bring inflation, and this might hurt the little guy a little bit in the beginning.
I love how ISK has been replaced with value based on one dumb statement in a State of the Union. That's awesome. No one talks about ISK and cost. It's all value now. That's awesome.
Didn't we add value?
Caleb, what did they say on the stream about ISK printing?
They did say that watch this space, and they sounded like it was not just your average soon TM. It was actually soon, like proper soon.
Did they? I think in the dev blog that they put out for the initial part of the mining changes and the ecosystem, I think within quadrant 2 was the incursions was one of them, and that was on the same as what their changes are now with the redistribution. So I wouldn't be surprised if they hit incursions, because that is just basically printing ISK. I mean, I would feel bad about it because I know a lot of my guys enjoy doing it within my corp, and that they make a lot of ISK doing that. But I guess that's a very big ISK printing machine, that incursion running.
Yeah, and in that sense, I would like to ask Kenneth something, because the whole thing with the ESS, from everything I've heard and felt from CCP, this is going to be one of the important tools to handle these changes that are potentially coming very soon. Could you maybe speculate on how would the ESS actually be used to do something like that if you were to speculate?
Yeah, there's no way I can speculate on that because I've seen the map.
Okay, so
But I'm telling you right now, what they say, watch this space. Yeah, watch this space. That's a good way to put it.
okay, because everyone and their mother has been talking about the ESS. Maybe someone else could speculate. What about you, Elise?
Yeah.
Do
Have you ever
you
played
have any
Yahtzee?
idea how this? Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do when you put them dice in the jar?
Hope
Shake,
and
shake,
wish.
shake. Yeah, you're gonna be shaking. Yeah. Watch this space.
I like how Kenneth says that with a very sadistic smile. Like, it's quite funny.
Well, because this ties into one of the things that I'm being blamed for, the whole thing of having said "make it hurt." I really think that people have forgotten how cool this game is when it just hurts a little bit more. And I know that we have to make sure that it's still playable and fun for the average Joe and the people that participate in fleets and all that stuff. But I'm just really hoping that we can get back to that place where, yes, I'm fielding something with dudes, and when I then lose it, I really get frustrated and actually want revenge and not just go, oh, someone just blapped my, what was it in Delve, 18 Rorquals? I already have the spares in my hangars. Like, Jesus Christ, this game is so broken.
So I hear a lot of comments about these magical average dudes. I don't think they actually exist. And all of the changes that have come in lately seem to be hunting these unicorns. I would love to meet some of them. They'd be great. But it would be nice if they're going to make changes like this, there's my main issue with this is communication, and springing it on people is a challenge, and springing it right now is a challenge. Overall, do I mind the changes? I kind of don't, but they're very poorly timed to interrupt what is a very interesting conflict, and that I guess that's my main issue with them right now.
See,
I
I
think-
kind of see the other side of that. I think it's quite a good way to introduce it now because you're busy with the conflict. Your mind is set on one thing, and then they kind of just throw something into the ring to say, hey, while you're busy with A, deal with B.
Yeah, but I think I would agree with Sadis when it comes to things that I would change and do in a period where there's like this massive narrative, exciting war. I don't think this would be on the table. I think there's many other smaller things that have potentially huge impacts that could really benefit us in a war without slanting or disrupting anything of what we're doing.
And I think if CCV had a magic 8 ball, and when they started this whole process, like they started this process some time ago, like 8 months ago, they pushed that first domino. They can't stop it now, right? They can't stop this train from coming. It's got to go to completion, or everything was for naught. I think if they knew that this scale of fighting would be happening at this point, they might have rethought how they're going to implement it. But obviously, they don't have that magic 8 ball, so they're going to kind of do it the way it is. But I do want to point out one of the things that CZB Goodfella and CZB Rattati did mention on stream, and they kind of put a big emphasis on this, is players between 1 and 5 years of age, and between 0 and 1 years of age as well. The retention of those has gone up. I will say that from the data that I've seen, which is not absolutely perfect, but the data that I've seen and that we've been shown through FanFests and through other CCP presentations, is that some of the biggest spikes in new people coming into the game happens after very large fights online, things that kind of create a spark, right? So after BTAC-R, quite a lot of like their BTAC-R babies that were formed from that. They're currently playing active roles in this massive war that we're experiencing. Do you think that maybe focusing on mineral redistribution in high sec, where newer players start, Do you think that's going to be a better option than, rather, do you think that's going to be the only option that CCP are going to look forward or look to use to retain newer players and to get them interested? I know they did mention a lot about exploration, how that was going to be the big push.
But there's so much in the sense of the added value from many of the changes that they're planning will mean that these new players will be picked up faster, because we're going to go back potentially to old school recruiting, when we didn't just do feeder corp recruitment. We actually did very strategic and targeted recruitment, and we allowed new players to kind of mature in high sec, and then we shifted them out when they were more ready. I think that will help retention so much.
I think that's an extremely naive view.
I can only speak from my own corp. The exploration thing is a good way of going for it, because I know a lot of the new guys that we get into the corp, give them a free exploration frigate that's fitted, and allow them to do the tutorial. Once they kind of get that down, they love it. They absolutely love it. They'll initially just stay within high sec and do those ones, and then we kind of try and push them towards the low sec ones and try and push them towards the wormhole ones, because obviously you get more ISK within the mini game and things like that, and they love it. It's fun for them. It gives them a bit of an excitement, especially in wormhole space, because there's no local. They kind of they get the shakes in a weird way the first time to jump into a wormhole. So pushing players into that direction is a very clever move from a high sec.
I think that it won't do what they're hoping it would do. So, like, why would a nullsec alliance who can weaponize any form of income take and hire a new bro when they can just create an alt to do the same work?
We're much more likely to sponsor new bros and bring them out into an organization that we run tax and profit off of, and then they benefit and we benefit.
Well, the point is that the labor that a new bro, an actual living, breathing person, is doing, the value of that is going up with these changes. You can't just brute force things easily and safely as more and more of these things are introduced.
So one thing I want to, and I don't mean to cut anyone off, but I just thought of something that Kenneth had mentioned before. And that, in the last 5 or so years, Pandemic Legion, which was historically a largely nomadic PvP focused alliance, has now an industry wing that can keep up with its needs, right? They have the vertical. They can mine they can get the resources themselves, build everything themselves. They don't have to worry about interacting with another type of person. Like, I don't have to go to Nyx Corp and say, hey, give me some of your minerals, or make some chips for me. I could do that all myself. Do you think CCP looks at that and says, hey, you know what? This wasn't a good idea. I want people to be reliant on others. I want to force that type of social interaction. I don't want people to have verticals all the way up unless they're in like a massive giga empire.
They explicitly stated on the stream that they don't want people to be self-reliant.
And even
so that's individuals
not
being self-reliant, right? So individuals going out and getting their own resources to build their ship from the ground up, right? To get the Zydrine. I mean, in terms of like corporations, alliances, and even blocks.
even if it's not player-to-player interaction directly, as you just alluded to, it would still be market interactions. So the items and the ISK is still going to move.
So I guess what I'm kind of getting at here is there are some theories that maybe people like these null groups, instead of relying on a living, breathing person, they'll go out and just do it themselves. Do you think that perhaps maybe they won't do it themselves? Maybe they'll just make ISK in the way that is best done in their area of space, then use that to trade for goods or services of someone else? Do you think that's in our future?
I think if you have to look at nullsec, the first thing that you do when you join a nullsec, you're instantly a spy. So nullsec allowing other people to do it for them, there's always going to be that element of it. Now, whether you maybe can contact people, for instance, in high sec and low sec and then say to them like, we can create a contract where we will buy certain amounts from you and then pay you for it, that you already have that steady stream. Something like that could probably work. And I'm sure maybe nullsec could actually create a HiSec corporation, then put alts into it and run it that way. But so that most likely will be the thing that will happen.
Which brings potential conflict everywhere, right? Because this is really the thing. Either you outsource those requirements or you will have a presence there. As a big organization in Null that wants to do a bit of everything and have eyes on everything and have the level of, call it, self-sufficiency that they had, they will have to do these things. And I think that's going to be very exciting. And I think TTT is just an example of this, right? I think we're going to see more of that. And these entities will have so much more fun with the type of gameplay that will evolve from that than they've had in the past 6 years.
Caleb, do you mean by the nullsec entities and starting their own, like, station regional trading or something like that? Or?
Yeah. I'm basically thinking, well, much more focus on the fact that, let's take something like the Imperium. The Imperium needs a Imperium named presence in HiSec, maybe with a bit of obfuscation, a presence in LowSec, a presence in wormholes, and their presence in Null. And where they live is, of course, their main field. But then things like feeding and feeder corps will no longer just take Mr. Newbro that's 1 month old and just plonk him down in Delve. They will put him in the HiSec stuff, make him learn how to do stuff in HiSec, whether that's industry or ganking or war decking or whatever, all the things that you need to kind of do to learn the ropes, so to speak. And this will be your university degree, or at least your bachelor's degree. Then when you're ready, you can move further, right? I think that's going to be healthy for the player experience, because they get that whole narrative that the rest of us used to have that got skipped from the feeder corps. I'm a huge fan of feeder corps because they really brought in this level of dedication to your player base, but it completely lost that personal story of, first I did this, then I failed, then I did this, and then I was flying with these guys. All of that stuff got removed, right? Now we get more social interaction along the pipe, in my opinion.
So
I can agree there with you, but I think there's also a different way that you could. I find especially within new bros that come through my corp, I'll have people that'll come into my corp and they enjoy the HiSec mentality, the way that we live and the way we do things. And then I've also had a lot of people that have gone to Null straight away and gone into the PvP environment, and they've had lots of content there and gotten onto kills, and it's been great for them. But even after like a year or so, when they've come and joined my corp, they say that they've learned quite a lot from us in HiSec that they didn't learn from Null. And I think there's definitely two dynamics there. And I agree with you there that, there's definitely things to learn in HiSec, and there's definitely things to learn in NullSec. And sometimes skipping that can be great for certain people, but it can also be bad for others.
So we put a ridiculous amount of time into organizing folks, specifically new players, and I'm talking about Karma Fleet here specifically. We have entire groups of folks who will work with folks in HiSec, train them to mine, train them to make money, answer their questions, make themselves available. And we do use that as a conduit to bring people in eventually, but it's something that any Null block worth its salt is doing now, because taking those players who are interested in coming out, very important. It keeps that intake going. But more importantly, those new players get the support structures they need to move out. So all that was already happening before any of this was even a flicker in someone's eye. Like the good nullsec groups have been doing that for a while. So I don't think that's part of this conversation.
I would say a lot of nullsec groups have started to do this after CCP Faze and his team like rebalanced frigates, where newer players had just an instant impact on the field of battle, right? So you could shove a guy who's just been playing for a few hours, throw him in a Griffin, and make someone's life miserable on the other side. I think that was kind of like a huge change that made newer players more valuable to these larger alliances. Exactly, which I had like several hundred on me at some time. So I think that there are interesting ways and maybe unpredictable ways that CCP can make changes that will have those effects, rather than these things, and I'm hoping to see more of them. But guys, we have been at this for about an hour and a half. I want to go down from the top to bottom of our chat just to kind of give like a final say of what you think about this change, whether you're hopeful for it, cautiously optimistic, whatever, negative, positive, just what your views are, and maybe a little bit about your group if you want people to take more interest in you. We'll start with Kenneth Feld from a wonderful group named Habit, also on the CSM.
My takeaway from this, I'm in Habit, part of PL, and the guy right there is my CEO. Yeah, I don't know if I'm pointing right. Maybe different on your screen. Anyway, I think there's going to be a lot of changes coming still. I know about some of them I don't. Some of them they're not going to tell us about until they're ready to. But a lot of the concerns that are now coming up, at least two of them that I hear quite a bit, there's stuff in the pipeline that's going to address those. And I don't even know where this comes from, but it's going to get worse before it gets better, probably. There's still a few more good shakeups coming, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot more grumbling. And Rattati is resolute in his beliefs that this is going to be better for the game, and he's the lead producer, and there we're going, and we're all going to make this journey together.
All right, Asteros Khan, up to you.
I'm excited overall as a miner. My value this is gonna increase overall. Being able to mine titanium all day. One thing I am excited though that I don't feel like anybody's really discussed besides Caleb is the potential of more markets opening up. Maybe your PySec or NoSec guys build their own small TTT in Dimitar space or Galente space, and they import a lot of those NoSec ores into HiSec and kind of create its own little, pocket of trade. So I'm kind of excited to see if that happens. And yeah, I'm just hoping that everything's done properly.
All right, Caleb, what about yourself?
Well, I think everyone knows that I'm a little bit excited about the potential of these changes. CCP is not going to land everything exactly where I believe that they should be, but
Good.
at least they got their balls back, so I'm very excited about this. And then I'm obligated to say that Moomin Amatin is probably the greatest meta writer of all time.
Moment's a hero.
All right, Eric Shang, on to you.
I would say actually very excited. I second what Caleb was saying. It's creating some interesting dynamics for us that we need to deal with now. I hope they keep it long term rather than just short. But yeah, I was kind of thinking about actually stopping to play the game completely. And this has really kind of like fueled me in a weird way again. So yeah, I'm excited.
All right, and Nick?
Oh, from my perspective, I'm very cautiously optimistic. I just got to figure out how to adjust what I like to do to match what I'm presented with. So I'll figure it out.
All right, and finally, Sadis?
Well, having played for a long time, I think that I've been hurt so many times before by half-done plans. I think that that's certainly on my mind. I know what they're trying to do. They do have to do something, and maybe shock and awe is the right thing to do. I don't see it, but if the rest of the plan is so brilliant that I haven't comprehended it yet, it just may work. But I hope that they do in fact have a plan, and it's not fixing POS code or any one of those many things that they've abandoned along the way. So in the short term, it's certainly going to bring some hardship to some people that I don't think they intend to affect, but we'll see how it goes.
All right, well, thank you guys. I just wanted to give a little bit of a wrap up myself. I was a little bit cautious going into this, reading the dev blog. seeing the responses from the CSM. I've followed the CSM since around CSM 4. I don't think I've ever seen the CSM so universally against a change or a tweak to the game since the Incarna expansion, which led into me being a little bit scared going forward because they see a little bit more of the picture than we do. But hearing the people today, I am a little bit more optimistic. They put a little shot in my arm. I will caution people moving forward to channel your inner angry mustache. He was very critical of it, but he put his arguments forward in good faith. So they weren't just like ragey pitchforky. He made some very pointed comments and reasoned them out very, very well and articulated his points quite well to the point where CCP actually paid attention to it and responded to it. So if you want your voice to be heard, try not to be so pitchforky, but absolutely do make your voice heard no matter where it is, be it on the Talking Stations Discord, the EVE Online forums, the EVE Online Reddit. I hear some people even use Facebook, which is absolutely wild to me. There is a daily show where we'll be going over the daily happenings of EVE Online at midnight, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for our U.S. audience. Of course, we will be back on Sunday as well for our Sunday wrap-up. We'll be talking about obviously this change and the big fight in 49 TACU. So I just want to say thank you again to people who watched the show, and a big thank you to our guests for providing an insight and perspective that you probably haven't heard anywhere else. These guys exist within the community, and I'm very glad to have heard from them. I am Elise Randolph with Talking Stations signing out, and we will see you later tonight.
Good day, everyone.